liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis on the mission.
I work at Truro and Penwith College, which is a college in the southwest of England, in Cornwall. I'm working to set up space apprenticeships. So we've got a great space team who are making sure there's training for young people who want to get a career in the space industry to get that training.
I work for Lockheed Martin in the UK. We do a whole range of different things. We work with the European Space Agency. We're also setting up the first UK spaceport, as well as working in defensive space, keeping the UK, our allies and space generally safe.
I work in the RAF at RAF Bulmer. I'm an aerospace system operator specialist. So currently where the RAF does where I am at the moment, they work on the air defence of the UK, but it also includes some of the long-range radar and space defence.
So Keeldra Observatory are an educational outreach charity. They do lots of public outreach events to inspire people about astronomy and space.
I'm an airline pilot. My official job title is a first officer, which means the captain is in charge of the flight, and if anything were to happen to them, or while they're not around, or while they're not yet at the aircraft, I am responsible for the cabin crew, for the passengers, and for the aircraft.
I work as a systems engineer. Systems engineering is not very well known until you actually start in an organisation, but it's a really critical part of every team. As a systems engineer, I have a few different things I do. One of them is helping to keep the team talking to one another. That means that when we've got specialists that might do mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, software engineering, a systems engineer is a person that makes sure all the different components are talking to one another. They also help manage our customer, so we do a lot with requirements and help to develop those and make sure the customer understands what they're getting at the end from a product. I also work in modelling and simulation. It's really important to test products through simulations and models to start with. That means that we save money when it comes to testing, and also we can predict what's actually going to happen. It's a really interesting role. I work a lot with different softwares, and I do a lot of interesting stuff on development of future programs in that domain.
I welcome people to the observatory. I really enjoy doing the kids events, and we get to show them like the meteorites we have and doing the activities with them and just chatting to people, answering the questions and just sharing my passion and knowledge with them about astronomy.
So one day I might be kind of working with the welding team to try and devise a space welding course to train young people in how to weld for a kind of aerospace, for new space planes like the Virgin Orbit, planes which are going up to deliver satellites from Cornwall. That might be my morning. Then in the afternoon, I might be working with my team to create that curriculum for space apprenticeships. And this will mean we'll be sat around a table with employers from the space industry, with experts in space, and with experts in education to pull together lots of bits of knowledge to put them into a curriculum. And this means that we can kind of create the best course possible. So it will be really a very varied day.
So my day-to-day job is currently in a training environment. So I'm now teaching the next generation of aerospace systems operators to move on to their current job working within the control and reporting centre.
My day-to-day job is report to the aircraft, check that the aircraft is secure, meet the cabin crew, we brief them, me and the captain together, we set up the route. So like when you get your phone out and you open Google Maps and set up the GPS, we have a much more complex system on board and we set that up. We check the weather for the airfield, we check the weather en route, we check if there's going to be any turbulence, take up on time, keep the passengers updated. Most of the flight, the autopilot's engaged and we effectively fly the autopilot, so we tell the autopilot what to do.
Currently through my job, we work at RAF Findales, which is one of the anti-ballistic missile warning centres in the world. We'll monitor any space debris that goes across, noting times, places it can be, and stuff like that's pretty predictable. So it'll be around the same time every day, the same bit of debris will flow past through the radar's sensor.
What do we look for in a CV for a space apprentice? There'll be things like your standard GCSEs, so you might want maths, you might want a science, it could be physics, chemistry or biology, and you want a good English grade. But if you're kind of keen on space and want that to be your career path, you might want to consider some other things as well. Maybe you've attended a science club in your spare time or in your lunchtime. It might be that you've gone to a summer camp which has been involved in space. It might be that you've actually built something And this could be on the computer, so you could have done some programming and built your own bit of code. It could be even using Kerbal Space Program, and that's a great computer game if anyone's tried it. But that could be launching rockets from your computer, or it might be actually physically building something. So that could be building a rocket or building a model satellite. So having some sort of combination of fairly good academic grades and some hands-on experience is really useful. But saying that, you don't have to have perfect grades. We're not looking for people who have to have every single A star and everything. We just want you to be someone who wants to learn and is keen on space.
Ended up with 10 GCSEs A to C. Then I moved through taking what was my AS levels and A levels in various subjects such as physics and English, and then I passed them and then decided to join the Air Force.
In school, I mainly picked a subject that I liked rather than anything that was going for a specific career. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a long time. My GCSEs, I took triple science, but the others were a little bit out there. I did French, I did statistics, and I did ICT. When it came to A levels, again, I just kind of picked what I liked. I did maths, physics, English, and classical civilizations. Maybe not your traditional route into engineering. I even did a physics degree, so I didn't come from traditional backgrounds. I didn't do apprenticeship in engineering. I didn't even do an engineering degree. But I thought it was more important to do things that I liked and then find something that worked with that than to find something where I was aiming to get into a job in the future. I think it served me quite well because I did quite well in all my subjects at school, and this meant that I could go on to university and do what I liked where I liked.
My favourite things were maths and physics. I've done my maths and physics A levels. I'm currently studying diplomas in astronomy and cosmology to get onto the astronomy degree.
I joined a gliding club at the age of 14. Anyone can join a civilian gliding club. I met a lot of airline pilots at the gliding club, and I used to ask them, what's the best route? What can I do? Where should I fly? And basically for me, the only route was to go to university where the private pilot license, which is called a PPL, it was cheaper. And that's the only reason I went to university. I did the PPL. And then after that, I knew I just had to keep flying and meet the right people, meet the right contacts, and that I would eventually make it. So from being young, my dream was always to fly. And the only educational requirement you need is 5 GCSEs between A to C. If you have A levels, it certainly helps. If you have a real passion for aviation and you like hanging around at airfields and flying different aircraft, again, that all helps. But you don't need a degree.
I did astrophysics at University of Southampton. When I went to university, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but physics helped me to kind of expand my knowledge base and progress in different routes. While I was there, I did a couple of internships working with engineering companies. I worked with a small startup called Archangel Aerospace, and then I worked with Rolls-Royce. Both these made me interested in engineering generally, but neither of them worked in the space sector is what I was really after. Lockheed Martin did a graduate scheme where I worked for 2 years before I became a full-fledged engineer. During this graduate scheme, I worked on a few different programs, including our armored fighting vehicles programs, but also some really interesting space programs and some future development programs as well. This then inspired me to continue working there, and now that's what I do in my day-to-day job.
I'm really closely tied into the space sector because I go and talk to so many companies to find out what they need and what skills they need for the future. So I'm one of the people who works across the UK to try and identify how we can grow the space industry and grow the space research environment through training young people to get jobs in the space industry in the future. So I guess I can summarize it by saying that I'm helping the space industry grow in the future.
There's always a chance to try something new. There's always developments, whether it's in the civil space field, whether it's in military space, whether it's in defensive space. Regardless where you are, there's always people working on it, and that means there's always new things coming out.
What inspired me to work in the space sector? When I was really young, I remember watching things like the 99 eclipse. I also remember watching the Beagle 2 landings in 2002, and this was an attempt to land a spacecraft on the surface of Mars. It didn't really work, but I remember having a poster in my bedroom. And then I remember when I was a bit older talking to a friend's dad who worked in astronomy, and he recommended some telescopes, and I just got really excited by the whole concept of space and astronomy. So then when I was about 15 years old, I looked into something called Space School UK, and it's actually held at the University of Leicester currently, and that's a summer camp for kids who really like space. So I did things like astronaut training and using telescopes. That was really exciting. So after that, for a few years, I thought, well, this space thing really does suit me. So when I got to choosing what I wanted to do for A-levels and then for university, I went down the maths and physics route because I thought that's going to guide me quite well into working in space. So off I went to do physics at university, and then I carried on from there into the space sector. But really it was the kind of being caught by these cool astronomy activities that happened when I was really young that really did make me want to work in space.
When I was younger, I thought I wanted to go into join the forces, and I'd had a look around and had a look through all the trades and see which one I found more interesting and was suitable to my interests as a youngster. And as it was back then, aerospace system operator incorporated a lot of the different variations from working with the army, working with deployable radar systems, working in the space industry of the military as well. Going through, as I've said, the anti-ballistic missile warning defense systems, working with satellite communications systems, and getting people in contact with people from as far away as the Falkland Islands near Argentina, and as it was back then, making sure there was communication lines out to Afghanistan.
I was really lucky when I was a kid, and I got to go to space camp in Turkey when I was 11 years old. This meant I got to try astronaut simulators, meet astronauts, and help to start my studies then. It meant I could do interesting research into the history of space and the future of space as well. From then, I just kind of had the bug about space, and I never really stopped being interested in it. I did astrophysics at university, which also helped me develop that kind of interest. That was looking at how things like how stars are born and die, and other bits of space where you might not necessarily see engineering, but it's really interesting. Like how a universe started and where it might end up in the future and where it might collapse. I love space, and I just kind of wanted to do something that actually would make a contribution to it, and that's why I chose engineering.
So when I was 5-year-old and I went on holiday to Ibiza, I had a look in the flight deck, and I remember saying to my mum, I'm going to do that job. I want to do that job. The view was amazing. It looked cool. And that was it. I was set.
If I was going to give advice to my 9-year-old self, I would really say try and get involved in anything and everything. A lot of people don't really realise that in space you don't just have to be an astronaut, you don't just have to be an engineer or a rocket scientist. You could do so many different things. And actually, for me, I think it would have been nice to have got different types of experience, worked with different people, worked in different areas. So I didn't know when I was 9 that there's a thing called space law, and that's all about how you kind of control who's responsible for rockets when they're in space and what the law is and how that law kind of governs astronauts and how they kind of work in the space environment. So I think finding out about some really cool areas would have helped me at the age of 9. And then that means I could have gone down different paths or found out different things. That's not to say I'm not happy with what I did, but I think just knowing a bit more about what's in space would have been really cool, and getting involved in different clubs and different activities probably would have widened my eyes to lots of different areas.
I'd say keep studying hard, get your grades, and then you'll end up pushing yourself as far as you can go. And you could join the military, you could end up designing your own space systems and get put in the atmosphere.
That it's going to be a really long, hard road, but it's going to be worth it. And actually, a couple of people have asked me if you could go back and do it all again, which route would you take differently? And I wouldn't. I've had an absolute blast. I don't feel like I go to work. I feel like I go and do what I love.
To work hard and learn as much as you can about what you're passionate about.
I think I'd give 2 pieces of advice, really. The first one is to keep doing things you like. It's really, really easy to kind of, as you move up in school, to people to tell you to do things that you're good at or to do things that will get you a certain career. But at the end of the day, if you're doing something you like, then you'll fall into the right job. But I kind of fell into engineering, and that worked for me. I think the second one is to not be afraid to do something, even if it's really difficult or you're worried you might fail. There are lots of really interesting things out there that you can try and do, but it doesn't necessarily mean you'll be good at all of them. But if you don't try, you'll never know. Even as an adult, I'm still kind of learning that, there's not always going to be the right thing out there for me to do, the right thing for me to try. But unless I try it, unless I give it a go, unless I volunteer for things, then I'm probably not going to get much further in my career than I am now.
If it's the longest route, the most difficult route, the most frustrating, but you make your dream career, for me, that's the best route of all.
How would I sum up my job in one word?
Varied.
Passion.
Exciting.
Innovative.
For me, it would be fun. And that's probably a bit cheesy, but it really is.